In the 1930s, a kid from my hometown named Lenny was playing in a cave where he was crushed by a rock slide within. Legend has it that he has haunted it ever since. Hence the name given to the cave, Lennyland, which was later spray painted in black graffiti on the wall of its first room by teenagers like me that liked exploring the cave. My friend Carlos and I discovered Lennyland during our summer break. It was nestled in a wooded area of a golf course, so it was easy enough to sneak in. We scoured the complex cave system that summer, exploring every level and room it had to offer. We eventually got bored of going through the cave by ourselves, so we started to invite our classmates along with us. Every time we brought somebody new, we recounted the legend of Lennyland just to heighten their experience of going through. It was a game to us, and seeing the cave explored through the eyes of new people made it seem adventurous again. One night, I was leading a few new friends into Lennyland. Getting into the cave was a bit dangerous because there is a steep drop off into the first room. You had to slide onto your butt, hang from a horizontal access plank, and drop yourself in. After I dropped in, I guided everybody in verbally and helped lower in people who didn't want to do the drop. Once everyone was in, I pointed my flashlight at the graffiti on the wall and said, "Welcome to Lennyland." They all pointed their flashlights across the rock walls and the sandy floor of the cave. It was already near pitch black because of the vertical drop-in. "This looks like a place people come to hook up or do drugs," said one of the newcomers named Candace. "You're not wrong," I said. "That's why we come during the daytime." I guided them towards the second room and said, "The only problem with coming in the daytime is that it's when the nocturnal animals are sleeping here." I crouched slightly to get into the second room, and the others followed close behind. "Nocturnal animals? Like bats?" asked a tall friend named Brandon. "Bats and..." I pointed my flashlight to the corner where a black furred thing crouched and leaned its head. It got up on two legs and it turned to face us. It started making gorilla grunts as it ran towards us. My friend screamed and then went silent for a moment, as Carlos took off his gorilla mask and laughed uncontrollably. He took off the rest of the costume and put it in his backpack, laughing all the while. "That's not funny," said Nora as she turned to her friends. "I knew we shouldn't have come." Candace and Brandon took it a bit better. My laughing was under control, so I tried to comfort Nora in a hushed tone. "Come on, please don't yell." Carlos added in, "Yeah, you might make rocks fall if you're too loud." Nora's face went pale. "Take me out, now." Candace intervened and calmly suggested, "Maybe we can escort her out and meet back at the car after we're done." "Yes," said Nora. All right, we're sorry," I said. "There's a way out of the cave, not many rooms away from here. It's safer for exiting." We led everyone to the cave's exit. It was a rocky path at about a 45-degree angle upward that led to the exit hole, so you could get on all fours and crawl up relatively easily. "Meet you at the car," said Nora grumpily. I'd never seen someone crawl as quickly as she did to get out of that cave. I whispered to Carlos, "I think you ruined your chance with her, bro." He scoffed and the four of us remained to go, spelunking deeper into the cave. We decided to take them down deeper to the second level. "Keep your flashlights on the ground in this next room," said Carlos. What? Why? Candace asked. Bats may be sleeping on the floor. Just don't talk or shine your light on them. We'll be fine. Actually, let's grab hands and turn our lights off completely, I suggested. We crept through the room hand in hand as quickly and silently as possible. Candace exhaled a breath of relief when we crawled through a small entryway into the next room. No more bats? She asked. No, I said. We can turn our lights back on. She turned her flashlight on right away, and her light blinded two people in hazmat suits in the middle of the room who were kneeling around a small laboratory. They made suppressed yells at us and guarded their eyes from the light. I couldn't make out the words that they were saying, but their gestures made it look like they were afraid of something, or maybe even warning us. They threw the glass beakers they were holding onto their lab table, and it caught fire. They bolted past us and dove through the crawlway. They were screaming as they made for the exit, and I heard hisses coming from the room that we were just in. Back! Back! Yelled Carlos. We need to leave. He went for the crawl space we just came through, but a flood of hissing and screeching bats rushed through, hoping to reach a deeper part of the cave where they could rest undisturbed. Carlos flew backward as the bats crashed into him. Duck! I dropped to the ground and guarded the back of my exposed head with my hands. Their fluttering wings and hissing continued for what felt like 5 minutes. When it finally ended, I got up to see Carlos whimpering with bleeding cuts on his face. It's okay, I told him. We'll be fine. Right now, we need to move. Guys, said Candace as she pointed to the lab. The fire was raging and smoke filled the entire room. I took a deep breath in, realizing I was inhaling the smoke from what was likely a meth lab. All of us scrambled back for the crawl space. Brandon threw his arms backward to push us away. I was starting to feel dizzy, and so I stood back and watched the chaos for a moment, as my fellow friends lost all regard for each other in their efforts of self-preservation. A rock fell from the ceiling and landed a few feet away from me. The smoke from the fire had no way to escape the cave, so it was causing the cave to collapse in on itself. And then something happened in my eyes. There was a burning sensation, and I assumed it was just the smoke irritating them. But the dark walls of the cave began lighting up to a gray-red filtered view. I could see everything clearly now through the colored filter over my eyes. Everything was a bit too much. I looked at the ceiling of the room and saw an enormous black-coated spider, spinning a web at a disturbingly fast pace. It was spelling letters into its web. When it finished spinning, it rested at the bottom and proudly admired its work. I read the words on the web. Got you. I ran for the previous room, following Candace through the crawl space, who was crying hysterically. I gave one look back at the giant spider on the cave ceiling. I thought I saw it lick its chops as it slowly lowered itself to the cave floor using its web. We made it into the previous room. The rocks were falling around us more rapidly. I swore there was an eye on the back of my head watching as that disgusting spider used its 8 legs to push itself through the crawl space. I shuddered at the thought, but I didn't look back. I had to have been hallucinating. I was seeing fire along the cave walls. My skin felt like acid was tearing at it. I saw human faces and eyeballs along the walls too. It was as if there was an audience looking down on me and watching with interest as I battled for my life. I heard a thud and a scream ahead of me. As I ran by, Brandon was unconscious on the ground with a bloody forehead. He had nailed his head on the low-dipping ceiling between rooms. He must have forgotten to duck. I tried grabbing for his arms, but my hands were too slow. They were moving towards him at a snail's pace. He started to sink into the sand floor. The sand quickly enveloped him, and his body disappeared into the earth. My hands grasped at the sand, which slipped through the cracks of my fingers. It started slipping through the lines of my palms, and so I dropped it and I ran towards the cave exit. I followed Carlos and Candace, but I felt my feet dragging as if in mud. I heard the quick pattering of spider legs close behind me, but I couldn't run any faster. My legs were sluggish. The spider surpassed me and crawled along the wall, trying to catch my friends ahead of me. We had got to the exit that Nora took earlier, and I saw Candace scrambling for daylight on all fours. She was almost there, just a few more paces to freedom. She leapt into the light of the cave's exit hole, but her body floated there, immobile. She was suspended in midair, and I knew that she was caught in a web. The spider crawled slowly along the web. She scrambled and screamed, trying to break free. It crawled until it enveloped the whole cave exit in darkness like an eclipsed sun, and Candace's screams stopped abruptly. Carlos turned and ran back towards me, and we both raced for the only other possible exit. As we sprinted through the rooms, choruses of voices pierced my brain. I saw shadows and outlines of people who had gone through the cave before. Some of them wore hazmat suits, and some wore adorned black robes with red, webbed masks. Some were just stupid teenagers like us who came to have a good time. I rushed past them all, no longer feeling slowed by the sand. Carlos and I were neck and neck as we entered the first room of Lennyland. He arrived first and he jumped for the horizontal wooden plank. His hands wrapped around the plank, but he couldn't pull his body up. The spider was already on the wall next to the wooden plank. I watched as it stuck Carlos's hands to the plank with its web and started spinning him into a silk cocoon. "No!" Carlos screamed. "Man, you gotta help me, please!" I closed my eyes, sat down, and accepted my doom as Carlos was wrapped like a mummy. I knew it was all done when his yells were muffled to complete silence by the silk covering his mouth. This was the last way out. There was no sense in fighting anymore. And then I heard a child's voice. "Get up," he said. I scanned the room and I saw a silver outlined boy dressed in ragged church clothes and armed with a slingshot. Small rocks were falling all around us, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the cave buried us. The boy grabbed a rock and loaded it into a sling. He pulled back and fired a shot at the spider. It hissed as it was struck in one of its eyes. He picked up another rock and reloaded his sling. "Last chance," he said. The spider focused its attention on the boy and lunged for him as he let his rock fly. I got to my feet, lifted my arms up, and I jumped for the plank. I jumped so high that I overshot, and I landed on the plank with my feet. I jumped again, this time straight towards the sun in the sky that was guiding me back. I imagined that it was pulling me towards it until the earth called me back. The soft leaves of the forest floor caught me as I fell into their embrace. The next thing that I remember was waking up in the hospital with a cast on my leg. When the police visited and asked about the cave-in, I was careful to leave the hallucinations and giant spider out of my explanation of what had happened. It was far worse receiving visits from high school friends. I expected people to hate me, but it turned out that they just felt sorry for me. Even Nora visited and cried with me over the death of our friends. My parents drove me home from the hospital the following day. They tried to talk me through my feelings. I considered telling them the truth for a moment, but I quickly rejected that idea. Maybe they would believe me and give me some meaningless words of solace. If they didn't believe me, they would think that I just lost my mind. And so I decided to just try and move on. I threw myself out of my bed that night, feeling safer now that I was home. With the help of a prescription medicine from the doctor, I was even able to sleep. I woke up in a daze to a red-gray filter over my eyes. I could see everything in my room despite the lights being out. There is a fresh, silky web with letters in one of the corners of my room, where the ceiling meets the wall. It read, "Not over."